And taxi associations say the banks and the quantum manufacturing company Toyota are fleecing taxi owners and drivers. Durban taxi operators go on strike over Toyota hiking prices of the quantum minibus, and commuters are the most affected. And good evening to you. This is Africa News Network First Fast Live. My name is Cindy Mabi and you're watching ANN7 Prime. This is our top story at 6:30 this evening. Minibus operators in Durban today blocked roads, including a major highway, as they protest the escalating price of the Toyota Quantum. Zintle Mgadi has more.
Making their voice heard, taxi owners and drivers blocked major highways in Durban. Drivers marched to the Toyota South Africa manufacturing plant in Isipingo to hand over a memorandum. South African National Taxi Council from all provinces attended this march, saying that Toyota and finance institutions are ripping them off in the sale of Toyota Quantums.
What we are saying is that 95% of the taxis, of the new taxis which are bought in the taxi industry or by the taxi owners, are financed. Now, if you look at the breakdown of each finance, deal that is done, the complaint from the taxi industry is that we are being ripped off by the seller of the vehicle, which is Toyota and the likes. We are ripped off by the financiers. We are ripped off by the insurers. We are ripped off by the tracking companies. We are ripped off by the companies that offer credit life.
Santako also says the car factory is responsible for the taxi violence in the industry because vehicles are expensive and owners end up fighting among each other for profit. They also say Toyota is not adhering to the radical economic transformation strategy, and that Toyota should allow partnerships in the industry to take up their rightful place in the value chain.
I'm receiving this memorandum on behalf of our executives. They couldn't be here because of the blockade in the morning, so they should be receiving this. But after receiving this memorandum, I would be presenting it to them, and then we will be going through this memorandum. And as always, you being the key partners for Toyota, we will engage you further.
The representative from Toyota accepted the memorandum and promised to get back to Santako in the next few days. Zintle Mgadi, ANN7, Durban.
And joining us live in studio is Volsher Kwane, National Black Business Caucus Chairperson. Good evening to you, or CEO, I beg your pardon. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. And talking about the taxi industry, one would say that it is a predominantly black-owned and operated industry, short of, or rather notwithstanding the competition from Uber and the mini or meter taxi sector. But this is essentially a ring-fenced industry. Why is it that there's so much reliance on external manufacturers for vehicles?
Well, the system in our country as it stands, we talk about the taxi business being black-owned, but actually the entire taxi industry is highly dependent on the financing of SA Taxi Finance, who themselves have got challenges with how they are carrying out their financing. They tend to be always charging a lot of money, adding a lot of money onto their repayments, which taxi owners can barely afford. The way that before we speak about Toyota, the manufacturer, this taxi finance company controls who the taxi owners go to for insurance. And they collude with that insurance company and they charge whatever price they want. And it's very hard for taxi owners to actually afford it, right?
So as a taxi operator, you a startup, you want to get involved in this lucrative industry. You don't, once you have your license, your public license, etc., you can't approach a bank individually to acquire a vehicle. How does it exactly work, and how does SA Taxi stifle the progress for taxi operators and drivers?
Well, because of the way, if you recall, I was in Parliament speaking about, in regards to the transformation of the financial sector. The reason why all these taxi owners end up at the taxi finance is because the banks are very rigid in the way they do funding. So due to a lack of having any any alternative, they then end up at the taxi finance, and they are literally ripped off the way that the way that it's set up. These guys are paying. There's a gentleman who paid 80,000 rands deposit to the taxi association, taxi fund, the South African Taxi Finance Company, and he paid installments. And there was a time when they just came and took the vehicle. So because in the first place they don't follow the same RICA processes that banks do, they just say as long as you got a certificate, you can come to us. And because that's the only people, it's almost like a mashonisa. You know, they're not following the right procedures in the first place when they create the product, the loan product. And then later when they repossess, they don't follow any other process.
Yes, but in formulating the black narrative in terms of economic empowerment, prior to Black Economic Empowerment Act in itself, the Employment Equity Affirmative Action, when the National Black Business Caucus was formulated, didn't you preempt or anticipate that there could be these kind of stumbling blocks where there are conglomerates and collusion that prevent black people from entering into business?
Well, we do try to rectify a lot of the issues that are in many sectors, not just this one. Everywhere there's collusion of white monopoly capital. And it literally blocks out participation in mainstream economy. There are many other issues that we know of that are within this sector and every other sector. But it's very hard to actually penetrate the collusion that takes place, because they are so well entrenched in those industries, and they control the fundamental bottom line of those who try to participate in that space. Whether you talk about construction, transportation, if you talk about the way trucks in mines, you know, how these big white-owned companies are running trucking logistics within the mining companies, it is the same. There's no access for black people, and if you want to enter, you can't get funding. You know, there's always a blockage. So you end up being victim of organizations like the South African Taxi Finance, because that's the only place you can go to get the funding, however expensive it is, however unfair it could be, and at the end of the day, it's detrimental to the very business that we're trying to empower.
I mean, there's lack of competition, as you're saying, that your
Yes.
only other alternative is exactly where you would be fleeced or even exploited. Let's take Tabiso Mulelekwa, Santako KZN spokesperson. Mulelekwa, good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. Just in the success of this protest march, I don't know how much more we can achieve in demonstrating on the streets and blockading roads, in dealing with issues that are fundamental to economic inclusion. How would you even rate the impact of today's action?
Good evening, Cindy, and thank you for inviting us. Firstly, it's Tabiso Mulelekwa, Santako National Spokesperson, not KZN. The impact of the strike, we believe it's a success on the basis that it's for the first time that Toyota has actually taken the matter seriously. Secondly, it's the fact that there is a concerted effort by taxi operators, as demonstrated in KZN, that unless there is a favorable response on the side of Toyota on the matter, these demonstrations would continue. In fact, maybe one must just indicate as a matter of fact, this is not the only targeted institution. There are a number of other institutions that the campaign would be looking at.
Yeah, but what are your expectations, especially from the Department of Transport, regarding the necessary reforms to policy that will make it a little bit less bureaucratic to get in the business, or even to sustain a business in the taxi industry, regarding where they procure the vehicles from? Because Quantum, or Toyota rather, landed this very lucrative contract, and the price has since quadrupled since it was first introduced.
Our argument is that the increase of the vehicle in question does not make sense, and this is why, among other things, we require Toyota to give us a justifiable explanation on why this drastic increase from 129,000 to almost 400,000. That's one. we have engaged the Department of Transport in the previous administration on the implication of the. Remember, these vehicles are designed in terms of the specifications as dictated to by the Act. But our argument is that the very pricing structure it seems to be an instrument through which the taxi industry is being brought to extinction. Because as it is now, the taxi operators on the grounds are unable to afford these vehicles. Remember, the taxi industry is the only mode of transport in the country that does not charge market-related prices. Our prices are more compassionate, taking into account the communities that we serve that are poorest of the poor. So that is the first problem. The second problem is that the car manufacturers, and in this case I'm not talking about Toyota alone, enjoy at least 6 billion rand annually from the taxi industry, and it is nonsensical for the taxi industry to be still continuing to be enduring discriminatory pricing structures without anything in a form of empowerment that's being returned back to the taxi industry. And this is why, apart from engaging with government, the taxi industry would then take the war right to the doorsteps of these parties, car manufacturers, financial institutions. Because in actual fact, one of the things that was raised there was that Toyota, the way in which it has structured its price, seems to be in collusion with financial institutions to ensure that the taxi industry is ripped. Because this 400,000 plus the interest rates that are being charged, you realize that at the end of your contract, you have actually paid R1 million to the financial institution.
Yeah, Remulela, just stay on the line, please. We have Mr. Lebu Kunguluza, is the founder of the South African Black Entrepreneurs Forum, an astute businessman, much celebrated and no stranger to television. Lebu, thanks so much for joining us and good evening to you. I mean, how do you assist, especially an industry which one could argue is dominated by black entrepreneurs, taxi owners and drivers? It is a historically a sustainable business at that. But at the center of it, it seems that the financial services sector is fleecing them of money and preventing any further development. How does one navigate around these challenges?
I think this is one of the main reasons why, for example, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, we're discussing exactly that matter at the Soweto Theatre, at the Gauteng Township Economic Business Week, because the issue here is that there are huge difficulties in the townships. And the taxi industry, you must remember that most of the taxi drivers and most of the owners of these taxis are entrepreneurs from the township. Most of them don't stay in the city. They are entrepreneurs from the township. And it's the only way that they make a sustainable living. That's the only way that they create jobs. And we've got to work, corporate has got to work an amicable plan with government and say, government, how do we work together to still sustain this industry that has been transporting the majority of South Africans for years? How do we put it in perspective such that it's still a sustainable industry, even though it's hard to regulate, but it still plays a major role in our country? So the reason why we are discussing those issues in Soweto is so that we can structure ways in which to fund the various industries. And the taxi industry is one of the most important industries, but we want to find solutions to fund and make sure that they're sustainable. Because as long as taxi drivers are driving old cars that are very dangerous and that are a hazard to the majority of South Africans, it puts the lives of the people of South Africa in danger. So the more accessible and affordable these cars can be, and if there can be a partnership between private sector and public sector to say, how do we make sure that the transportation of the majority of South Africans is safe and is new? Because the taxi drivers, if they find these cars very expensive, they're going to continue to drive roadworthy cars that are putting the lives of South Africans in big danger.
Yeah, but also, like, just in terms of how much the industry, let's stick specifically to Toyota here, in their vehicle sales of the Quantum amounting to almost 6 billion rand per annum, we've heard from Santaco. This is not commensurate in what they get in return, or rather what taxi owners ought to get in terms of their profit margins. So when you have your discussions, including, the various sectors, do you think that there will be an appetite from the banking sector, automobile companies that have enjoyed this environment where there isn't much competition for them to thrive?
There's definitely not much competition for them because there are very few banks in South Africa. And I think that even the taxi industry has got to find a way to set up a funding structure for themselves in partnership with government so that they don't have to rely on banks. Banks are a commercial structure. Banks are there for the money. Banks are doing what you call risk management. They're not there to serve a social situation. You understand? So I think the only solution that I can advise is that government has got to collaborate also with the taxi industry and find a solution to get a new funding structure. Just like they've got a funding structure necessary for the agriculture society, where they've got an agri-bank, or all those type of things. There needs to be an agency that focuses on creating a sustainable funded industry. But the role that the banks are going to play, it's always going to be a commercial role. I don't think they're going to change anytime soon.
All right, Lebo, just before we let you go, the details of your Gauteng Economic Development Week deliberations, where and what time?
Yeah, they are taking place at the Soweto Theatre from tomorrow till Sunday, where we are again trying to find solutions to fund our black entrepreneurs and our township entrepreneurs because they find themselves excluded from the mainstream. So we're trying to have them create their own economy where they buy from each other and build with each other so that they're not too dependable. At the moment, we are too dependable with it to the mainstream and to also the capital structures that were set up years ago before the apartheid struggle. So we're saying let's set up our own economies, let's create our own. So there's so much money that goes out of the township economy. So if people want to come to this event tomorrow, they're allowed to go to a website called www.gtab, which is GTEB week.co.za, which is a short for Gauteng Township Economy Business Week. So if anyone is interested in coming tomorrow, we have the minister there coming of small business, we have the Gauteng province coming there. We're expecting over 5,000 entrepreneurs to come through tomorrow. So if anyone is interested in joining this revolution, this evolution of building township entrepreneurs, they're welcome to come through. It's at no charge. They must just come through to the Soweto Theatre.
All right, much appreciated, Lebo Gongoloza. He is founder of the South African Black Entrepreneurs Forum. As you heard, it's at the Soweto Theatre starting tomorrow. Now, another fallout of the taxi strike in Durban. A 30-year-old man died after being airlifted to hospital when he crashed his bakkie. And the man was traveling along the N2 near Joyner Road intersection when he crashed into a stationary truck. According to emergency services personnel, ambulances battled to reach the crash scene due to a city-wide taxi strike that clogged several main arterial roads. And we have a caller on the line, Tebogo from Gauteng. Good evening to you and welcome.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Thanks very much.
What's your comment or question? Please turn down your TV set.
My name is Tebogo Makulwana. I'm from here in Simunye in Gauteng.
Go ultimate TV, please, Tebogo.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Retlo.
Okay.
You still there?
Comment is that like I'm the HOD of Sanko in province in Gauteng, and then I'm the HOD of public transport. Like comment is that issue A is an issue where was supposed to be addressed before, because if you can check or not the black transport, like they are depending in the taxis as the communities in Gauteng. And these taxis, if you can check, they always paying a high rate for the banking, and then at the end of the day, ubona bankelwa di taxi ki di bank, and then we see where this is still a bottleneck thing for the white people to come and take over the transport with the local people, because if you can check the issues at the high rate, is only affecting our black local people. And also,
yeah, sorry, I'm sorry, I have to leave it there. Thanks indeed. So, Gekwane, you know, we hear about these imbizos and talking, but I think it's time for action now and really getting to an amicable scenario where there's mutual benefit for role players in the industry. At the moment, it seems that the taxi drivers and owners got the short stick of the of the whole deal. So how do you rectify it? Is there anything to be done? Do you just throw your hands in the air?
No, there's a lot that has to be done, and there's a lot that can be done. It's very practical things that can be done. First of all, I think the dependency of black-owned businesses on white monopoly capital is problematic in itself. I'll give you an example. We are non-sectoral as NBBC, so we deal with every single sector that exists in business, and we try to get black businesses to have mainstream participation in the economy. I'll give you an example with something simple like bread, okay? We can assist an entrepreneur to start a bakery, but that bakery still has to buy flour, oil,
all your ingredients from the value chain of probably
from white
monopoly
companies.
For that matter,
And we call them monopoly companies not just as a terminology that's used everywhere. It's because they actually monopolize the industry and they collude on price. So it doesn't matter how this entrepreneur tries to do something, they're still dictated to by that pricing, so the bread will still cost the poor person the same amount of money.
Okay, give us
so
a sense
what
of
we
hope.
need to do, what we are trying to do now is say we want to empower agri-processing, so that flour must now be processed by a black entity so that it can supply the black bakery and create shops that are black owned that can also be the retailer of that product. It's very simple for us to do that because we as Africans, we own the economy. The white monopoly only owns the destination of the money in the economy. If we change that, then we will be self-sufficient.
Yeah, you're saying in sheer numbers we have the buying
yes,
power.
I mean, if some of the products are on your shelves now, if black people don't buy them, they will collapse. You know, the masses are the ones that support those companies to be what they are.
Yeah, we need to collaborate. There's also a movement called Buy Black SA, which talks exactly about that.
Yes.
Where new industries are created to essentially coexist with the colonial systems as
exactly. But the problem is funding. We always have this gap where it comes to funding because the funding is with the banks momentarily, and we have our own government funding institutions who also we want to get them to be more lenient in their funding practices.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there for another day. Thank you so much. That's Volshare Gekwane. He's the National Black Business Caucus CEO, and Tabisho Mulekwane is Santaco's spokesperson nationally. And we had Lebu Gunguluza, who is the South African Black Entrepreneurs Forum founder. And you at home, thanks indeed for calling. We'll take a quick ad break. We'll see you shortly.